Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me. In this reflection, I'll be sharing my journey exploring the history of the teaching profession and how it evolved during the progressive era. I focused on how education between 1890 and 1950 shaped the way we as teachers today think about civic learning, career readiness, and democratic participation. As a social studies teacher in a rural charter school in southeastern Indiana, I wanted to understand how my role connects to the broader history of education. The process helps me see what we do in classrooms today is deeply rooted in educational change. Starting with the progressive era, fundamentally transforming education from memorization to experiential, student-centered learning. Figures like John Dewey emphasized that learning should connect to real life, something I strive for daily in my classroom. I was struck by how early reformers viewed social studies as a way to prepare students not only for work but also for citizenship. The Smith-Hughes Act of 1917 and the Cardinal Principles of Secondary Education in 1918 tied education to both career preparation and civic responsibility. That dual purpose still defines what I do, in helping students see how history, geography, and civics shape their roles in the community and workforce. In my own teaching, I've noticed that students engage more deeply when they see relevance, when they can connect the Great Depression to modern economic challenges or link World War II to current global issues. The timeline reminded me that this approach isn't new. It's the continuation of a century-long effort to make social studies meaningful and applied. To build my understanding, I used a combination of primary and secondary sources, which provided a structural overview of key educational milestones. From there, I explored legitimate academic and historical databases such as the Library of Congress and the National Archives. My process involved verifying each source's credibility, checking publication dates, authorship, and institutional backing. I also questioned each document's perspective. For instance, the Americanization movement of the 1920s aimed to unify immigrant students under a shared civic identity, but it also reflected cultural biases of the time. Interrogating sources like this helped me realize how social studies has always been influenced by social and political contexts, and how important it is for us as teachers to present multiple viewpoints. As I analyzed these materials, I asked myself, who created this document and what was its purpose? Whose voices were included or excluded from this narrative? How might these historical perspectives influence how I teach today? For example, reading George Count's 1932 work, Dare the School to Build a New Social Order, challenged me to think about education as a tool for social change. It made me feel how I can empower my students to question systems and think critically about fairness and equity. This process also reinforced the importance of teaching inquiry skills, helping students evaluate sources, identify bias, and construct their own interpretations of history. These are the same skills I use when building this reflection. From this exploration, I've learned several lessons I'll carry into my teaching. Learning should be experiential and connected to real life. Dewey's model still resonates. Students learn best when they do, discuss, and reflect. Social studies must balance civic and career preparation. The progressive era's focus on both democracy and work readiness remains relevant, especially in rural communities where students need to see how education links to local opportunities. Critical thinking is central. Just as I question historical materials, I want my students to question the world around them, to see history as not as fixed facts, but as evolving interpretations. Equity and inclusion matter. Recognizing past biases helps me design lessons that include multiple perspectives and voices, ensuring all students see themselves in the story of America. Finally, this project reminded me of the power of digital storytelling and digital timelines. Tools like Timeline.js allow us to visualize history dynamically, connecting events, people, and ideas across time. For students, this transforms history from a list of dates into a living narrative they can explore and contribute to. Digital stories also make reflection more personal. When students create their own timelines or digital exhibits, they're not just consuming history, they're interpreting it, making choices about what matters and why. In a rural charter school setting, this kind of project bridges local history with national themes, helping students see themselves as part of the ongoing story of democracy and education. In short, digital storytelling invites students to become historians and not just learners of history. Exploring the history of social studies education through the progressive era deepened my appreciation for the field that I teach. It showed me that our work as educators is part of a long tradition of preparing young people for thoughtful, engaged citizenship. By continuing to question sources, use digital tools creatively, and connect learning to real life, I can honor that legacy while preparing my students for their future.